On Indianapolis this week, another monumental ruling for same-sex marriage in Indiana. Now the people looking to the nation's highest court. Plus, the new push from Indianapolis Mayor Rev Ballard to get support for his anti-crime plan. And Rev Charles Harrison on the state of our streets and why his group has an eye on Missouri. Then Kip and Abdul on the hot topics of the week.
From RTV6, the Indy Channel, this is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
A ruling, nothing has changed. A federal court says Indiana's same-sex marriage ban is unconstitutional. It is the latest monumental shift on this issue. Stays in place until the United States Supreme Court will take the case. Now, the ruling came down a little more than a week after a three-judge panel heard some oral arguments. In the ruling, the judges say the state of Indiana's argument for the ban is, quote, so full of holes that it cannot be taken seriously, even comparing the state's arguments to that of arguments in the 1960s to prevent interracial couples from getting married. Governor Mike Pence released a statement following that ruling, and in his words, he says, while I continue to hope that the right of the state of Indiana to enact laws concerning the institution of marriage will be upheld when this matter reaches the Supreme Court of the United States, Hoosiers may be assured, as my administration has done throughout this case, we will continue to uphold the rule of law in all executive branch operations as this matter moves to the highest court in the land. Joining us now are Pam Lee, a plaintiff at the center of one of the lawsuits in the case, and Jennifer Wagner, a spokesperson for Hoosiers United for Marriage. Pam, I want to get to you right away. Your reaction to the court's action, or really inaction, because the case still remains in limbo.
We were ecstatic, absolutely ecstatic. It's just one more step towards hopefully getting recognized, our rights, our benefits, and our marriage recognized like everyone else's.
And do you think that the court will pick up this case? Obviously, come October, the court may pick up Indiana's case. It's already looking at other cases. Are you waiting for that? Is this going to be a long year as you wait for the court to decide something? It is going to be a
long year, but we've waited this long, so what's another year? We'll wait. Keep fighting as long as we have to.
And Jennifer, for Hoosier United, what's the next step? Because the court may or may not take the Indiana case. It may take one of the other cases that are going on in Utah or Virginia. What do you do in the meantime?
Well, since we began this campaign, it's always been about public education. And we're going to continue to go out into communities statewide and talk about why marriage matters, why the freedom to marry is so important in Indiana. And obviously, having these cases on our side is hugely helpful. But what we want to do is make sure that people get to meet Pam and her wife, that they get to meet our plaintiffs, that they get to meet the couples who were able to marry in the window when marriage was legal here, and understand that they're our friends, our neighbors, and they are families just like any other family in Indiana, and they deserve to have the same protection under law.
Pam, you know it's a divided U.S. Supreme Court. It usually rules 5-4. There is a lot of opposition to same-sex marriage, while there's also a lot of support for same-sex marriage. Are you concerned at all that the court will come back and say, in a 5-4 decision, and say that it will not allow same-sex marriage?
Absolutely, and it would be devastating. I'm not going to lie. But we really feel like that the tide has turned and that the wave is going in our favor. So we just have to wait and see, but we're very hopeful.
Jen, the legislature comes back in January. Is there anything else that you will try to address with the legislature? You can't take up this issue because they're going to wait to see what the court does. But are there things that you're going to be doing with lawmakers in an effort maybe to address some of the other issues that surround same-sex marriage? Well,
I don't think there's any legislative agenda planned, but obviously we are still a little bit afraid that the amendment to ban marriage in Indiana will come back. But I think we did a lot of educational outreach during that campaign, Freedom Indiana, to help lawmakers understand that not only was the amendment unconstitutional, the language has been held as such in other states, but it's unnecessary and we need to go in the other direction. And I think, that campaign, this campaign, will help explain to them why Indiana needs the freedom to marry.
Federal judges, when they usually rule, the language is usually plain, not very colorful. But in this case, the appeals court seemed to go out of its way to really knock down Indiana, in some cases even making fun of the state. Did you read that ruling? And what did you read into that? Because it was very scathing, the language that they used.
It was all Judge Posner, and I'm thinking he might have started writing that ruling while he was still on the bench hearing the oral arguments, because a lot of what was in that unanimous ruling was brought up at the oral arguments in Chicago. He's known for his colorful language, and obviously he had some choice phrases. I particularly liked the heterosexual couples can get drunk and pregnant, and their reward is marriage, but homosexual couples who want to adopt are not allowed to get married. But he's a magnificent jurist and legal scholar, and I think, you know, having that unanimous decision coming out of Chicago and coming from him might increase our chances of getting to the Supreme Court. I hope.
So for you, the next couple of months, for you and your wife, what will that be like in the sense of, do you have to wait? Is it a waiting game? What do you want the public to know as you wait?
It is going to be a waiting game, and you kind of try to have to put it on the back burner and not think of it constantly, because it can just drive you insane waiting to hear, you know. But things have been coming much quicker. The results have come much quicker, or the answer to the lawsuits much quicker than we ever anticipated. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the way this goes too. I hope we hear something soon as to whether or not they're going to hear our case.
Officer Pam Lee, Jennifer Wagner with Hoosiers United for Marriage, thank you for joining us. We hope that you'll join us again.
Thanks. Thank you.
After the break, Kip and Abdul at odds. You are watching Indianapolis This Week. Two of our political insiders, Democrat Kip 2 and Abdul Hakim Shabazz with IndyPolitics.org. The appeals court handed down a ruling on the same-sex issue. It was a scathing ruling that it did. Let's take a look at what they had to say. In part, they said the challenged laws discriminate against a minority defined by an immutable characteristic. And the only rationale that the states put forth with any conviction that same-sex couples and their children don't need marriage because same-sex couples can't produce children intended or unintended. It goes on to say, so full of holes that it cannot be taken seriously. What do you make of this language from this court?
Well, I think it's important to point out that this presiding judge in the circuit court up there was a Republican appointee of Ronald Reagan, and he took it right to the state of Indiana, to Mike Pence and to the Attorney General and their argument before him. It's one of the most scathing opinions I've ever read as a lawyer. I find it extraordinary.
To say scathing would be an understatement. I mean, this was almost...
So you guys agree?
Yeah, this is almost like backslapping the state of Indiana over its same-sex marriage ban. And also, embedded in that opinion was about 40-something pages long, was almost sort of a shot across the bow, saying if you guys try to pass HJR 3 next session, there's a good chance we'll find that unconstitutional as well. So, I mean...
it wasn't just about the same-sex marriage ban that the slapdown was. It was about the lawyering in the case and how bad the arguments were.
Will the Supreme Court take our case, or will they take Wisconsin's or Utah's or Virginia? Which case will the Supreme Court take to answer this very question?
They'll probably consolidate a whole bunch of them, would be my guess. But I mean, there are lawyers fighting to be the lawyers who get to present this to the Supreme Court now because they think it's going to be so historic.
And the other thing to keep in mind too is that as more and more circuits, we already have two other circuits come out and say, you know what, your same-sex marriage bans are unconstitutional. The Seventh Circuit is now number 3. I think it becomes a lot harder for supporters of the ban to make their legal case when they just keep losing time after time after time.
Another big issue, the state Supreme Court took on the issue of right to work. Will we see some sort of ruling on this anytime soon?
Well, the right to work people, they already lost in federal court, trying to have it thrown out as unconstitutional. Federal court said no. And I sat there for the arguments at state court. They seemed very skeptical. I mean, they asked tough questions on both sides, but some of the judges seemed very skeptical about the arguments the unions were making, saying, well, hey, the federal government says we have to represent everybody in a union shop, and so state of Indiana got to help us out here. And the judges seemed like, hey, well, that's your problem. That's the federal government's issue, not our issue.
Kip, a setback for labor?
Well, we'll see what the Supreme Court says. I think they had every right to bring the case, and I think they actually, as opposed to the state of Indiana in the other case, they have a very good argument. The state constitution says you can't take something away from somebody without just compensation, and they're saying you're forcing us as a matter of law to grant these people privileges that they don't have to pay for, and everybody else has to pay for them, and I think they're right about that.
Tomorrow, Governor Pence will be in Iowa for a conference involving Asian companies that do business in the Midwest, but you folks, I would imagine, are seeing a much bigger picture. Is he going to Iowa?
Well, he's also doing a fundraising breakfast for Governor Branstad, who's running for a re-election in Iowa. So it's not just a trip with a bunch of governors. He's going out there for a political reason. And you know, I think that the fence he was talking about, maybe it's the state chairman who wants to build the fence to keep Governor Pence here in the state of Indiana.
Just a reminder: Mike Pence is on the executive committee of the Republican Governors Association. This is what they do. They go out and they help Republican governors.
In Iowa.
Yes, because the governor of Iowa is is a Republican. So guess what Mike Pence does? He helps a Republican governor. Some days a cigar really is, once again, just a cigar.
And sometimes guys are looking to run for higher office, and no doubt about it.
And I mean, Iowa is one of the early states. So I mean, it's fair to say
the earliest state.
It is the earliest state. So it's fair to say that if the governor's interested, it's not a bad place to be, Abdul.
Right. No, of course
if
not.
If he is interested.
Is he going to New Mexico or California? Well, I guess he is.
Well, but if he gets called,
wherever the Koch brothers want him to go is where he goes
next. Wherever the RGA asks him to go, that is where Mike Pence goes.
In a few moments, we'll hear from the mayor of Indianapolis. He's running now a new radio ad campaign in hopes of encouraging people to support his anti-crime fighting plan. What does the mayor have to do? And is this extraordinary that the mayor now is looking maybe for public support to sort of change the tide?
It's interesting where they've paid for their advertising. Almost all of it is, the lion's share of it is on his radio station, WIBC, which is a very conservative audience. And so I take it to mean that the mayor's having trouble selling his plan to his base. It is a tax increase, and I think, you know, conservative Republicans generally don't like tax increases, so I think he's having a tough time selling to his own base. Otherwise, he'd be trying to advertise it on other radio stations.
But isn't the issue here the homestead tax credit?
The issue is the homestead tax credit, which you could label, all right, say, all right, it's a tax increase. But
yes, it is. Thank you for finally admitting it.
But here's what it also is too. It is an outdated way of the income taxpayer to subsidize the property taxpayer, because if
we fought that argument, but what is this? Does this mean that he's having to ask for help to convince those Democrats that are saying we will support the public safety tax, but not?
Well, actually, the Democrats have moved on the whole issue of early child education. I mean, because John Ballard, at-large city councilor, is getting ready to come up with his own plan. Yeah. The question is the funding mechanism. So I think the mayor scored a victory in the fact that, all right, hey, you know, the Democrats, they talk a good game about early child education. Now here's a chance to put up. So they are moving the ball in that direction. I believe that mayor will get his homestead tax exemption credit phased out, but it'll probably be over time and sort of phased in.
Well, look, the Democrats, I think, improved the Rebuild Indy plan with the mechanism that they said. They said the mayor was wrong about how he's going about funding it. They came in and they fixed it. I think that what they're going to do here is probably fix this as well.
I don't know. I'm going to go that far, but these are also the same people.
Surprised.
These are also the same people who want to pay for police officers using one-time funding. We all know how that works out.
They almost agree, and then they sort of fall apart. It's Sunday, guys. Show some love.
Yeah, I'll show love to my wife.
Okay, go Colts.
It's my wife's anniversary, our anniversary, so that's where all the love is going this weekend.
Go Colts.
Go Colts.
You can keep up with all our insiders by looking at their Twitter handles. You can keep up with Abdul and Laura and Jen throughout the week right here on our homepage, theindychannel.com. Mayor Greg Ballard is hitting the airwaves. He's launched a new ad campaign to sell his public safety plan to the city. After the break, we're sitting down with the mayor right here in the studio with Indianapolis This Week continues. There's a new ad campaign hitting the airwaves. It's not trying to sell you anything to buy. It's promoting the mayor's public safety plan with the hiring of more officers and funding pre-K education.
This is Mayor Greg Ballard. There's not one single answer for reducing crime.
That's a portion of the ad, and joining us now live is Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard. Sir, is this ad campaign an effort to pressure Democrats in some way to buy into the program? You're getting some resistance on this plan.
Not too much from the public, no question about that. When we go out and talk about this, they are very much in favor of it, and the numbers always indicate that people are really strongly for pre-K for at-risk youth. So that's why we think it's important to go forward with the ad. There's a little bit of information in there that we want people to understand, but there's also no question that we want the council to act also. But all indications that are coming to us is the public is very, very much behind this plan.
How about the Democrats, who in many regards are not sort of loving that portion of the plan? Are you going to have to meet more with them? Are you going to have to drop your portion of that plan? How's that all shaking out?
Well, every Democrat that I know has been for pre-K all of their adult lives. So what they're going to do into the future, I am not sure, but you know, we've talked to them quite a bit. We continue to talk to them quite a bit, but they've always been for pre-K. So here they now have a great opportunity to take a really big step forward for Indianapolis in the pre-K world, much more so than anybody's ever done before. So hopefully they'll do the right thing here.
And if they don't do the right thing, Mr. Mayor, will you have to change your plan? Because at the end of the day, your priority is still public safety. You want to put more officers on the streets. Will you let this in any way get in the way of that plan?
Understand that public safety is more than just police officers on the street. We do want that, but there's more. If you want to protect the police officer of the future, you need to be for pre-K.
So you're saying that you'll stick to this plan?
We're going to stick to it, but in some way we have to get pre-K done in the city at a completely different level than we're doing it right now.
On Friday, you had a major announcement. Wells Fargo coming into town, investing some $4.5 million into housing. How will that change the dynamic of the housing that we offer, or the ability for housing in our city?
It's terrific, because they're going to put them out into down payments for homes up to $15,000 each. So not everybody will get $15,000, but those who apply, those who qualify, can get down payment assistance up to $15,000, and they're doing it to the total of $4.5 million. So this is a big hit in the city, and will allow a lot of people who otherwise cannot afford homes to get into a home. And they're working obviously with the Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership here in the city of Indianapolis.
You came back from a trip from New York City, where you chair one of the big conferences regarding sports stadiums. Did you learn anything new on that? Because there's talk about us possibly having a soccer stadium downtown. Are you any closer to that, sir?
Well, I don't know that we're necessarily close to it. I think people are moving, and we're trying to figure out if we can get that done or not. But I've been the chair for the Professional Sports Alliance for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, ever since it started. And so I get asked to participate in the summit every year. I'm always on a panel, and I talked about what does the stadium of the future look like, and that's really what we were talking about. And we were talking about things like the Barclays Center and things like that, and what are they all going to look like. But the stadium for the soccer folks, we have to talk about it. Do we need something else? Can we use what we have? Should it be multi-use, which I think it should be? What's it going to look like? I'm not sure where that's going to go yet.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. Always welcome to come to the program.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Next is a civic leader using his influence to help stop violence in our city. Now Rev Charles Harrison on the state of our streets and why his group may be heading to Missouri. He joins us after the break. Streets of Ferguson, Missouri have calmed down after a violent protest broke out and racial tensions were high following the shooting of an unarmed black teenager by a white police officer. 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed by Officer Darren Wilson, leading to those violent riots in the streets. Now the Department of Justice is conducting a civil investigation into the police department in Ferguson, looking into its practices as well as its training. Joining us now, Rev Charles Harrison, a leader of the 10-Point Coalition right here in Indianapolis, and his group is planning to go to Ferguson, Missouri soon. But before we go to Ferguson, Missouri, let's talk about the streets of Indianapolis. A much calmer summer, even though we have seen some sporadic shootings.
Yes, it's really been a very good summer in terms of what we normally get. We have really seen the homicide numbers reverse themselves. I think we are about 2 or 3 homicides below where we were last year, and we went into the summer about 10 or 15 ahead. So we think CICF and the public safety did some real good work. The Central Indiana Community Foundation put about $100,000 on the streets this summer. We focus on youth jobs for youth. We felt like if we were having youth work on the streets during the summertime, it would keep them out of trouble. They poured money into the 5 zip codes for groups that focus on prevention, community policing, similar to what 10-Point does. We had churches step up to the plate, like Light of the World, to help lead an effort to create safe havens for teens on the weekends. And then the work that IMPD has done. They have done a tremendous job in those really 5 targeted zip codes in targeting individuals that are most likely to be the victims or the perpetrators of violent crime. So the combination of those efforts, I think, made sure that we have a much safer summer.
And we have to celebrate that success, but we also have to focus on there's still a lot of work to be done. So what else do you need as a community leader? What more can we do at home? What other stakeholders have to come into the conversation so that we continue on this trend? Because even though we've seen a decrease in violence, we're still seeing some violence. So what else needs to happen?
We still have to focus on these root causes, and that's what we don't want to get away from. I think what the mayor is doing, some of his efforts, we feel are positive, but there are other efforts that we really have to focus on. We have to find a way to provide employment opportunities, again, for ex-offenders, and then some of our young people that are coming out of low-income homes that don't have the kind of income coming in that leads a lot of them to getting involved in drug trafficking and criminal activity that leads to the kind of violence. So we're trying to get the business community to join in with us, because we just don't want to focus on summer jobs. We think that we can provide long-term employment, weekend jobs for teens where they can work on Fridays and Saturdays, just a few hours and make a little money, and I think it'll keep them off the streets.
Another big issue that you're looking at, 10-Point Coalition, and maybe traveling here soon to Ferguson, Missouri. What do you hope to accomplish there?
Well, a couple things. The ministers in Ferguson, Missouri want to do two things. One, they want to address the issues relating to the killing of Michael Brown and the relationship between the black community and the police department. And we have a lot of experience at doing that here in Indianapolis. So we're going to focus on how you build a relationship between the community and the police department and deal with those sensitive issues that are concerned in the African-American community, police brutality, lack of sensitivity, and making sure the police department is reflective of the community it serves. The second reason we're going is there's concern that there needs to be focus by the black community on the issue of black-on-black gun violence. And we want to train them to do similar kinds of community policing and street engagement that 10-Point does here in Indianapolis. So we're going to be doing some training. We hope to take the chief along with us, because we're going to have that kind of dialogue between the police and the community. And then the third piece is we do a lot of work at homicide scenes that could have prevented this.
You calm the temperature down.
We calmed the temperature down. And that's what did not happen at that homicide scene in Ferguson that caused it to explode. So we want to talk with the ministers and the police department about the kind of work we do here in Indianapolis.
So Ferguson, Missouri, here comes Indianapolis, Indiana. Reverend Harrison, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come back again.
All right.
Appreciate it. And we thank you for watching. I'm Rafael Sanchez. We'll see you next week. Have a great Sunday.